Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Just another dead girl. Underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black, lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article, published by a local newspaper, reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight. Yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. he insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance, but I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party, feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about, if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie. Something with a Z, though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream, where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl, the one who got scared at every creak in the dark, the one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her before the trip had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast. Or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in. Enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens, and I'll fade away like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater. The above story ends, but the suspense and thrill have never stopped. Right here is another equally interesting story. Please continue listening. Lessons from my shadow dreams. It was storming. The sky a slab of slate with swollen thunderclouds crowding its expanse, each nudging for room. A wicked, unrelenting wind whipped chestnut hair into my eyes and mouth. Pulling it out of my face, I looked at the desolation surrounding me. Empty air met me in every direction. I don't know where I am, I realize, as the panic starts to set in, and my breathing turns shallow and rapid. On my hands and knees, kneeling on what appears to be sand made from stardust, I take a calming breath and rise until I'm standing. What is this place? Where am I? The last thing I remember is going to bed, my lids shutting to the lavender of my walls as I slowly drifted off to sleep. Not knowing what else to do, I started walking, and that's when the voices began and the shadows formed. At first, it was small. It was subtle. A whisper here, a mutter there, voices that got louder as I trudged on. I struggled against the wind, hugging my arms to myself, each hand gripping an elbow until my knuckles turned white as chalk. As I walked, the black, star-lit sand at my feet began to rise with the wind, forming shadowy figures that strode alongside me, the overlapping voices tumbling from their open mouths. I watched in morbid fascination, my feet slowing as their dark forms became recognizable, their faces slowly morphing into a colorless version of the faces I know. On my right was my mother, a horrendous, nightmare version of my mother, her blue eyes dark as coal, and her face twisted with malice. What are you doing? Really, Midge? Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with you? Came from the cavern that was her mouth. My eyes went wide, fear and pain forming as tears that threatened to spill. You're not good enough. Why would I want to touch you? You're not what I want. Came from my left, and my head whipped to see an equally nightmarish version of my ex. At this point, my feet had slowed until I was almost at a complete stop. More and more, figures from both my past and present began to form and dance around me, each hurling their own unique version of verbal awfulness. With each invisible blow, I shrunk until I was crouched on the shifting sand, hands splayed over my face to cover sight and sound. I squeezed my eyes, silently begging for it to end, for the voices and noise and all the venom of the world to stop. Midge, breakfast? I gasped, jolting awake to my mom's voice calling from the kitchen. As reality settled in, a sick dread pooled in my gut at the vague nightmare I'd left behind. It was a bad dream, Midge. Just a bad dream, I mumbled to myself as I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. I tramped downstairs, the thick soles of my boots making loud thuds on each carpet-covered step. I slid into a distressed wooden chair at our equally distressed dining table that doubled as our breakfast nook. As I shoved eggs in my mouth, scrambled just how my mom knows I like it, I thought about our history exam today with rising anxiety. I was not the best at memorizing details, like dates or times, and last night, Amy had another drama round with her douche of a boyfriend. My mom sat across from me, early morning sunlight streaming in from the window sink, sipping coffee from the chipped Mom of the Year mug I got her for Christmas last year, before Dad left. Before it all fell apart, we sat together in silence. She analyzed me over her mug as I finished off my butter-soaked toast. "You okay, honey? You seem stressed," she asked with a slight tilt of her head. I nibbled my toast while staring at my plate, not wanting to admit how egregiously unprepared I was for the day's exam, or the nightmare I'd endured that clung to me like static. It felt like I was seeing reality underwater, my senses warbled and muffled, making everything as impactful as an echo. My mom cleared her throat, snapping me out of my reverie. "Midge?" she asked, her gaze holding concern as lines formed between her dark brows. "I'm okay, just not as ready for my exam today as I'd like to be," I answered simply. The truth was, I wasn't ready at all for anything. My mom pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, a clear sign she knew I was lying. To be fair, technically, I really was worried about the exam today, but I also was still disturbed by my nightmare, which stuck to me like a dark, immovable shroud. And it being my parents' divorce anniversary didn't exactly help. As if sensing my thoughts, my mom's eyes darted to the calendar on our white linoleum fridge, absolutely covered with magnets and pamphlets or flyers. Instantly, her gaze softened when she recognized the date. "Hey, it's gonna be okay, baby. I know today will be hard, but you'll be okay. Plus, your father is still coming for a family dinner this Friday," she said with a quirk of her mouth, as if that should excite me, as if that fixed everything. I simply nodded as I tried to swallow my last bite of toast, which had turned to sandpaper in my throat. "Gotta go, Mom. Thanks for breakfast." Before she could answer, I quickly grabbed my backpack and was out the door. I sat in history, staring blankly at the open-ended questions in front of me. Mr. Sikowitz sat at his desk in the front of the class, hunched over papers he was likely grading for a different set of students, his red pen lightly roving and marking with steadfast eyes. I looked back down at the unanswered prompts in front of me and felt my heart start to quicken. Gods, I'm screwed. Dad would be so disappointed, I thought with increasing fear. My breathing became slightly uneven, and with the panic, my nightmare from the night before reached towards the front of my mind. This was the last thing I needed. But it seemed the more I tried to repress the images and the memory, the harder they fought back. Shadows began to gather at the edge of my vision. That same smoky, starlit sand from the dream clustering along my peripheral. I blinked hard 2 or 3 times while keeping my head down, trying to force this contorted melding out of existence through sheer denial. But to no avail. The darkness stayed. Slowly, and with threatening dread, the dregs of my nightmare creeped towards my desk until it surrounded me on every side. I briefly darted my eyes around the room, desperate to find some reaction, any recognition from my classmates of the nightmare unfolding. But I was left wanting. The line between dream and reality was paper thin, blurring further as the familiar wraith-like figures began to swirl upwards and form, then shattered entirely as my nightmare came to life. My mother was again on my right, with a mouth black as pitch and her blue eyes drained of color once more. "What makes you think you can do this, Midge? Answer me, Midge. What's wrong with you? Are you fucking stupid?" she hissed as her ghastly form drifted towards my ear, her teeth gnashing with each syllable. It wasn't exactly the same as the nightmare, but it was damn similar. Now my father, in his trademark suit and tie, took shape in front of me, causing me to flick my gaze upwards. Looking was a mistake. His usually coiffed hair laid limply on his head. His eyes were endless black holes, and he stood with his arms crossed, intimidating and unmovable despite his form. His slightly transparent clothes were rumpled and worn, which wasn't like him at all. And he looked at me with a face of disgust and hatred as I'd never known. At least, not from him. "Grow up, Midge. What's your problem? Why can't you just get this right?" he shouted, somehow slamming his not-so-solid hand on my desk, causing me to jump to my feet with a yelp, my chair making a loud crash as collateral. "Ms. Sloan, can I help you with something?" My head whipped over to Mr. Sikowitz, and just like that, as I met his dark brown eyes, the spell was broken. I looked around and realized that the echo of my nightmare had vanished, and all eyes were on me, as if deciding if they needed to grab the straitjacket now or later. I audibly swallowed. No, sorry, Mr. Sikowitz," I said, as I haphazardly righted my chair off the ground and sat while keeping my head and eyes firmly down, my dark hair creating a curtain on either side of my pallid face. The rest of the day passed in an anxiety-filled blur. At every turn and every corner, I looked for the shadows, waited for the starlit sand to reappear, and inch along the edge of my vision, anticipating the god-awful convergence of my nightmare and reality. But it never did. I stared out the bus window on the way home, watching the rain spatter the glass in large, heavy drops. "Hi, honey," my mom hollered from the kitchen when she heard me walk through the door, her voice warm and rich over the cold I felt in my bones, like a homespun blanket. Our house was a pretty open floor plan, with the kitchen slightly sectioned off, but having two large archways on either end of its L-shaped design. I watched her through this opening for a moment, trying to reconcile the nightmare version of her I saw at school with the flesh and blood in front of me. She was currently unloading the dishwasher, and when her hello was met with silence, she turned to look at me, her arm pausing briefly as she made to put away a plate. Her face scrunched, and she immediately put the dish on the counter. "What's wrong, honey? Did something happen at school?" I tried to speak. I tried to open my mouth to tell her about all of it, but nothing would come except tears that began to blur my vision. "Oh, honey," my mom said, as she strode over to me, crossing the distance in 3 or 4 strides due to her unfairly long legs. I let her hug me, soaked up the feeling of being wrapped in her arms, and for a solid couple of minutes, we stood in the entryway like that. I reveled in her warmth, the sensation of her solid arms around me, and memorized every detail that made her real. Keeping contact with a hand on my shoulder, she guided me to the couch where we sat, knees angled towards each other. "Honey, what is it?" she asked. I looked at her, and at first I could only stutter. As I struggled to form coherent words, I felt my anxiety and panic start to rise. The shadows were at the edge of my vision again, causing my breathing to turn rapid and shallow. "Honey?" my mom asked, leaning closer. I could barely hear her, barely see her over the pounding of my own heart. "Midge," my mom said, a bit louder now, giving my leg a slight shake as she placed her hand on my knee. The shadows and the darkness were beginning to take shape now, starlit sand rolling across the ground as it crept ever closer. Tears pooled along my lids, causing my vision to blur. Suddenly, warm, soft hands enclosed my face, and my mom's face, my real mom's face, swam in front of me. "Midge," she seemed to say in almost a whisper. Look at me," she said, increasing the pressure around my head. "You are not broken, okay? I don't know exactly what you're seeing, but it's not real, okay? I'm real. I'm here," she said, taking the limp hand from my lap and gently placing it over her heart. I felt the softness of her wool sweater under my fingertips, like touching a cloud made of silk. I focused on her eyes, blue, just like they were supposed to be. "Your mom's, right here, Midge, right here. Not that ghoulish thing of nightmares," I thought to myself, as the vile shadow, puppeting as her, pushed and crowded closer along my peripheral. "That's it, baby. I'm right here. Breathe, honey. Breathe with me. Focus on my voice, on my face. I'm right here," she said with a squeeze of my fingers, as she had removed her hands from my head and was now holding my own in her lap, her gaze unwavering. I took a steadying breath. Just breathe, Midge. That's all you have to do. Just breathe. I counted to 10 as I inhaled, and did the same on the exhale as my mom, keeping hold of my hands, did the same. That's it, honey. Breathe. Just breathe. 10 in and 10 out. You can do this. I nodded, and as I expanded my lungs in and out, feeling my pulse start to slow, blessedly, the shadows began to ebb, receding from the edge of my vision. The grotesque, half-formed versions of my loved ones melting and fading away, bit by bit. By about the 5th or 6th of these exercises, the nightmare was all but gone, the shadows having slunk back to whatever hellish mindscape they belonged to. There she is, my mom said with relief, seeing my eyes clear and the panic gone, a slight smile playing on her lips. I crumpled, burying my head into her chest with small sobs. Oh, honey, she let out softly, stroking the top of my head as only a mom can. Has this happened before? She asked gently. I lied, shaking my head slightly as I kept it tucked into the crook of her arm. Gods, her sweater felt like the softest pillow. I soaked up the comfort. Mid, do you know why your father left? I whipped my head up, pushing out of her arms, taken aback by the subject change. Realizing I wasn't going to answer her, she continued, but her face took on a faraway look, as if trying to see through the smog of time to the not-so-distant past. Our family, both the men and the women, have always struggled to master themselves. We have the curse of extreme feeling, of intangible emotions strong enough to drown countries. And for some of us, that leaks into our dreams. And then, sometimes, those dreams, usually the darkest of nightmares, leak into our reality. She shifted her focus back to me and asked with a tilt of her head, "Do you understand what I'm saying, Midge?" "No, not really," I mumbled, swallowing and tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My mom leaned forward, using her thumbs to wipe away my residual tears, and took my hands in hers. "Honey, what were you feeling? What did you see?" she asked, her blue eyes piercing. I don't know," I said, avoiding her gaze. "I was sitting in class, trying to take my test, and, well, I wasn't sure of some answers. And then I was thinking about Dad, and I panicked. Then the nightmare started. But no one else could see it, just me." At this, I raised my head to look at her with wide eyes, searching for answers or preparing for a straitjacket, whichever came first. My mom pursed her lips, seeming to debate how much she should or shouldn't say. I saw the moment she decided to bear all, clear as day. "Honey, you were experiencing a moment of extreme emotion, of anxiety and fear, maybe panic. And sometimes those things we can make us forget who we are, or even where we are. For the few in our family who have a very special heart, our emotions can cause our worst fears or worst anxieties to come to life. It usually takes an extreme or traumatic event. And given today's date, she trailed off, her eyes going distant again. After a moment, with a shake of her head, she returned her attention to me. She made to speak, but I stopped her before she could get a word out. "What happened with Dad?" I asked. My mom silently opened and closed her mouth, clearly struggling with what to say or how to say it. "When it happened to me while I was with your father, he thought I had gone half mad. Mine was a nightmare too, a wretched one that had me crouched in the corner like a rabid animal. Once we learned of our family history and what some of us have to deal with, he decided he didn't want to stay with someone who couldn't trust her own emotions, her own feelings, whose reality and dreams tended to mix and meld until they were one and the same." My mom's voice got progressively softer as she spoke, until it was barely above a mere whisper. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I said, taking hold of her hands and squeezing her palms. "That's all right, sweetie," she responded with a grimace, tucking another strand of chocolate brown hair behind my ear. "You know why?" Her eyes twinkled mischievously. My brow scrunched as I tried to find anything good in what had so far transpired, or what I'd been told. "Because," my mom said, clearly seeing I was coming up empty, "it's not just the bad dreams our hearts can bring to life." She smiled, placing a hand upon my cheek, rubbing small circles against my skin with her thumb. "It's the good ones, too." Let's continue with the next no less thrilling stories. The White Door. The White Door. It's been locked since the day we moved in. No one can find the key anywhere. Nobody has a clue if and what it leads to if they could access it. It's a locked door with no key, and it sits in the middle of our bedroom wall in the room I share with my younger sister, Chloe. It's a strange, plain white door with the number 13 written on the top of it, also in white. It merges in completely with our white wall. Even the door handle is white, making it blend in so well. It's almost invisible, and most people completely miss it. When one of us that can see it point it out to them, they appear perplexed. It seems only a few of us are able to see it. I could have said, it's like a picture of a door painted onto the wall itself, but on closer inspection, it is slightly indented, and the white handle sticks out a little from the wall in a 3D effect. Chloe, along with my parents, claim not to be able to see it, and that I'm making it up in my imagination. But my older brother Felix claims to have not only seen it, but opened it when we first moved here. You opened it? Yeah, once on my 13th birthday, a couple of years ago. What did it lead to? And what did you do with the key? It didn't lead to anything. Flory, just the inside of a brick wall, and there was no key. It was unlocked already. Then how did it get locked? I don't know, Flory. Maybe Mum or Dad locked it? You can hardly blame them. What's the point of having a doorway to the inside of a brick wall? There wasn't even a corridor or secret passageway. I'd forget about it if I were you. It's completely pointless. Probably someone's idea of a laugh or something. You know, to catch nosy people like us out. Why would Mum and Dad lock it and pretend they couldn't see it? I thought to myself. The mystery of the door growing deeper in my mind. Don't get me wrong, Felix's discovery on opening it did make total sense. After all, the wall it was a part of was one of the 2 outside walls of our room. The one next to it was the window wall, as we like to call it. But like Felix said, why on earth would you want to have a door that led to the bricks of your house? Surely the builders would have just put a complete wall there, like all the other rooms. It also didn't explain the jingly musical sound and singing voices that came from behind the area of the door on a night, or the light that shone underneath it, lighting up the darkness. I'm pretty sure I've also heard other voices from behind it, too. Nothing spooky, sounding just happy and giggly, almost like there are children on the other side of the door playing. It gives out a nice vibe when I hear them, leaving a smile on my face. Flory, earth to Flory, you're daydreaming again. Sorry, Chloe. What was you wanting? Mum asked what you want for dinner. The options are spag bowl or chicken curry and rice. Ugh, neither. I'm not even hungry. Whichever you want, Chloe. You are gonna eat it though, right, Flo? My little sister questioned me suspiciously. Sure, maybe. I don't know. I'm still full from lunch. I might just grab a salad. Yeah, tell Mum I'll get myself a salad. I quite fancy that. Chloe looked unconvinced, but left the room to let Mum know anyway. A while later, Mum came and tapped on the bedroom door. Flory, can I come in? Sure. I've made you up a chicken salad, like you asked for. But I have to say, I'm getting worried about you. You're not eating properly. Though I understand salads are a good choice, you also need to be eating other things. Mum, you don't need to worry. I'm okay. I'm just not fancying the same food I did before. And salad is a healthy choice, especially as you added the chicken. Well, okay, I'd like you to come and eat it with me. I'm having one too. We need to sort your birthday party out. I don't think your guests will want salad as their only choice of food, do you? I don't know. A salad birthday cake sounds healthy to me. I giggled, the reply, something I hadn't done for a while. This made her smile as we both went to the dining room to eat. The chicken salad was good, and I agreed to have a chocolate cake for my birthday party. I didn't really have the heart to tell her that I didn't want a birthday party, and no one would come anyway. She seemed more excited about my birthday than I did. A week later, my birthday was finally here. And while my parents and sister were busy putting the decorations up, I called Felix over. There was something I wanted to know from him. As we went to my bedroom, I could already hear the children's voices again. They seemed to be singing something, but I couldn't tell what. Do you hear that? Hear what, Flory? The singing? It's coming from behind the door. Not really, but it does look a bit different. Look, the 13 is standing out 3D like the handle. It was like that when we moved in before I opened it. It's your 13th birthday, Flory. It can't be a coincidence, can it? He put his ear up against the door to try and hear the voices. Looking back at me, he suddenly gulped and said, Flory, you're right. There is someone on the other side of the door. They're calling for you, but I thought you said it was just bricks behind there. It is. Well, it was when I opened it. I slowly creeped over to where he was at the door. What should I do, Felix? I don't know. Maybe you should try and open it? I don't have the key, remember? Neither did I. When I opened it, remember? I just grabbed the handle and pulled it down. Give it a try. What do you have to lose? Okay, but please hold my other hand. I don't want to do this alone. You don't have to, Flory. I'm right here with you. Okay, here goes, ready. I grabbed Felix's hand and pulled down the handle. The door swung open. Sure enough, it looked like nothing was there but a brick wall. Then I heard it too. Flory, help me, Flory. I had no choice but to risk hitting the brick wall as I stepped inside the doorway. Just in front of me was a winding downward staircase made of stone steps. I looked behind me and saw my room again. But who was calling me? And how did they know it was me? I made a decision. I was going to go down the staircase and find out who it was. I turned back again to see the door closing. Wait, no, don't close it. I thought you was coming with me. I am with you, Flory. Once on this side, the door closes until it's time to return to your party. Quick, let's go. Felix made his way down the staircase and out of sight before I could have a chance to think. How did he know that? He said it was only a brick wall. Had he actually stepped inside and been here before? Felix, wait. Flory, we help Flory. There it was again. I'm coming, I replied, and started descending the stone staircase slowly, as I wasn't sure it wouldn't make me slip. I hoped Felix was all right. He had practically ran down them. Felix, are you still there? Hello? No response. Even the other voice had gone quiet. As I got lower, I could hear a dripping sound begin. Drip, drip, drip. It started slowly and sounded like a long drip each time until it eventually sped up into a drip, 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 drip. By this point, the stone stairway was also damp and starting to become completely waterlogged at my feet. I wasn't sure I could actually go down any further when the voice started calling again. Flory, help, Flory. It was sounding more desperate. I'm nearly there. Where are you? Just as I went to take a step down into the water, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Not that way, Flory. You'll drown if you go that way. Follow me this way. Felix, why didn't you go slower and stay with me? I knew you'd find me, Flory. Come on, give me your hand and step up onto this ledge on the right. I had been so focused on not slipping down the stairs, I hadn't bothered to look around me. I grabbed Felix's hand again as he helped me up onto the ledge. I paused to look around us. We seemed to be in a cave. The walls were solid stone. Looking up, I could see stars glinting above. At least they looked like stars. But unless it was a dormant volcano or other cave with an outside view, they were probably not stars. Maybe we were in a diamond or crystal cave, seeing them glinting above. Or maybe that was the dripping water droplets. Either way, it was so beautiful. I felt my breath catch in my chest at the sight. The water I had almost stepped into appeared to have a fast current, and I was glad Felix had been there to guide me to the ledge. Where to now? I asked eagerly. Follow me. It's this way. The ledge wasn't very wide and was a little slippery, but we got there slowly. When we reached the end of the ledge, Felix lifted me down, pointing in the direction we were going to next. It was very bright, almost blinding. I lifted my arm to shield my eyes as I looked towards what I guessed was the sunny outside. I wasn't far wrong. We stepped out into a beautiful summer's day. There were flowers, trees, lovely green blades of grass with a beautiful silver water fountain in the middle. Swings on the trees, a pool. Children were playing happily, skipping, dancing, and singing around. Some were making daisy chains, while others were making buttercup chains. The lyrical sound of birds chirping and singing. The whole place gave me a peaceful feeling, just like a happy dream. Only this was a real place I'd come to from my bedroom, down the stone staircase into a summer's garden. So I had heard children laughing and singing through the white door. Yes, you had, Felix replied, almost secretively. Why don't you come and meet some of my friends? He beckoned me to follow him again. Your friends? But you said there was nothing but a brick wall behind that door. How can you have friends here already? He glanced at me with a comical expression on his face that said, seriously? You need to ask? But all he said was, follow me, you will see. I stepped onto the grass with him and started following. As we got to the silver water fountain, I heard the voice again. Flory, please, Mom. Dad, Flory, help. I glanced into the fountain and saw Chloe in tears and me on my bed. She was shaking me, crying, looking helpless. Mum and Dad rushed into the room. Suddenly, my breath caught again in my chest. I could feel the pressure as Dad pumped 119 223 and Mum was breathing into my mouth in between. I felt the warm breeze flow down my throat into my lungs. The white door appeared on my left. Felix was still on my right. The fountain still in front of me. Felix, what's going on? You have to choose, Flory. Come with me and meet my friends this way, or go back through the white door to Chloe and our parents. Choose, Flory, before it's too late. But I don't understand. Felix, what about you? I'm always with you, Flory. Stay with me now, or go back to Chloe before the door stays closed. Without another thought, I bolted towards the white door, my heart beating hard in my ears. I jumped through it into my bedroom and onto my bed, turning to see the door slowly closing, with Felix still behind it, smiling and waving goodbye. Felix, I cried out, bolting upright on my bed. Flory, Flory, you died. Flory, you wasn't breathing. I couldn't help. I'm so glad you came back. I couldn't bear to lose you too. Chloe sobbed. I held her in my arms, soothing her as she stained my top with tears. Mum and Dad looked like they had seen a ghost, their faces as white as the door that used to be on my wall, but had completely disappeared as it had closed, taking Felix with it. Did you shout out Felix when you came back, honey? Was you with Felix when you were gone? Is heaven real? My mum seemed to have a million questions. Don't be silly, dear. Felix died on their birthday 2 years ago. He drowned in Glitter's Cove. He can't have been with her. Once you're gone, you're gone. Isn't that right, Flory? I wasn't sure what to tell my dad, or who to answer first, so I decided to answer them both at once. I don't know about heaven, Mum, but there seems to be a peaceful, happy place. And yes, Felix was with me. Dad, Felix is always with me. I'm his twin, remember? The end and the next story will be told right away. Please listen carefully. The unspoken relative. The door to the interrogation room creaked open. A girl was inside, still in the depths of RM sleep, did not stir. Sleep was all she had, her only escape and only therapy from her current fate. She remained curled up on top of the table like a feline, conserving her energy before the hellhounds would be turned loose on her. Haley, a psychiatrist, made her way into the room. She could see the subject. Emily had insomniac circles around her eyes that made her look like a raccoon almost. Haley felt bad for having to wake her, but if Emily wanted sleep, she would need to talk at some point. She reached out and took Emily's hands in hers. They were callow and clammy. Emily emitted a faint whimper, but her eyes remained closed. Haley let go of her hands and brushed Emily's hair. Emily stirred, and her eyes sluggishly opened. Her dark eyes, with saucers for pupils, studied the green emeralds Haley had for eyes. They remained still, watching, then closed again. "Come on, hun. Time to get up." Haley spoke, lightly shaking her. Emily whimpered and covered her face with her arms. Haley stood and scooped her off the table. She expected a fight, but Emily remained docile in her grasp. Before Haley could put her down, Emily clung to her and rested her head on Haley's shoulder. It was difficult to imagine Emily was capable of what the police were accusing her of. Emily was acting more like an 8-year-old than 18. That could be cracked up to the recent traumatic experience she endured. She had recently learned who her real father was, after he took her mother, and stepfather hostage. Her mother was currently recovering from injuries in the hospital, while her stepfather had succumbed to his injuries. Emily wailed suddenly, catching Haley off guard. The reaction was so sudden that Haley almost dropped her. "Honey," Emily buried her face in Haley's chest, with heaving sobs that made her tremble all over. Haley rubbed her back and comforted her, something that Emily never got from anyone since they found her in the house. She had passed out with the landline phone still in her grasp, with a split table beneath her that broke her fall. Haley had a job to do here, however, and that was not to comfort a possible suspect. Haley gently pried her off and sat Emily down in a chair. "I'm going to be honest," Haley began. "They suspect you conspired with your father." All the melanin drained from Emily's skin. This couldn't be happening. She quickly shook her head in denial. Emily strained herself, attempting to protest, but her voice cracked, and her words died in her throat. "You may want to see this," Haley said, handing her a tablet. A frightened moan escaped her mouth when the video started playing. When Emily learned the truth, she attacked and interrogated her stepfather in the basement for putting a wool over her eyes, while her real father was otherwise engaged upstairs. And now, law enforcement suspected she was hiding her father's whereabouts. They intended to use this footage as leverage against her if she refused to cooperate. Her knees drew up to her chest as reality washed over her. His blood was on her hands too, whether she liked it or not. But this didn't mean that she conspired with her father. They needed to know that. Emily tried to speak again, but like before, her words could not reach the surface. Like baby sea turtles being plucked away by famished seagulls before reaching the ocean, words still eluded her. She buried her face in her hands, sighing shakily. Haley placed a small notebook before her along with a pencil. Emily sniffled and started to write. "So, he took your cuffs off for good behavior?" Haley asked. Emily nodded. "And after you found out the truth, you became angry with your stepfather?" Emily replied with a reluctant nod. She wrote her next question with a trembling hand. "There's nothing I can do to avoid prison, is there?" Emily pushed the notebook over to Haley with tears starting to trickle down her face again. "You can tell me where he is?" Haley said. Emily whimpered in frustration. "I don't know where he is, because I did not conspire with him." She wrote. "It's not up to me on what happens to you," Haley began. "But you need to give them something if you wish to avoid prison. Even if you didn't conspire with him, you still assaulted your stepfather, who is now dead." Emily huffed and snatched the notebook. "My father's gun killed him, not me," she wrote. "You stabbed your stepfather with a fork. He already had a severed leg and a missing finger, which I believe had his wedding ring on it. You very well could have. Do you think a jury would let you go free after that?" Emily choked back a sob. "I'm sorry, hun. I know you were under a great deal of stress, but that still does not excuse your actions. He's one of my teachers in high school, okay? Mr. Black is what he goes by. I'm sure that's how he found out that I was his daughter." Emily wrote. "Okay, maybe that will help them find him." "Anything else?" Haley asked. "Please, I need to be there for my mom, so she pulls through." Emily wrote. "I'll see what they think about this," Haley said, taking the notebook with her. "But after what you did to your stepfather, I doubt you'll be allowed to see your mother in the hospital. It's for her own safety." Emily's face fumed in disbelief at what she heard. With that, Haley left her to sit alone with her thoughts. 2. When the sheriff entered the interrogation room, Emily's heart sank like an anchor to the depths. She sheepishly wiped her tears away with her sleeves. "Save your crocodile tears for another day," his eyes said. "You'll be held at a local hotel under house arrest till your court date," the sheriff said, attaching a tracker to her ankle. "You can use the phone inside the motel to call your mother in the hospital. Perhaps that will help you find your voice again. Better pray you find it by your court date," he continued, escorting her out. 3. On court day, her mother was not well enough to attend. However, she was thankfully still alive and recovering. Emily quietly sat next to her appointed lawyer. The judge and jury were informed that, due to the events Emily had been through, she had trouble speaking, and her lawyer would speak for her. They had given her a notebook and pen to use to communicate as well. Emily was prepared to own up to what she did, however. The crowd was certainly a surprise, which threw her off. She hoped it stemmed from curiosity about her father, rather than hatred towards her. She nervously watched as the judge made his way to the podium. He was an older gentleman with a horseshoe mustache that commanded respect. A man with true grit that would not hesitate to punish any poor soul that dared question his authority. To the full extent of the law, he despised any scumbag attorney that would willingly fight for a defendant that was obviously guilty. Emily could not tell what his initial impression was of her just yet. "Take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be mindful of the jury and the defendant. Keep y'all's voices down so they can hear themselves think." The judge spoke as the jury filed in. Emily reluctantly turned to see who her selected peers would be. 6 women of varying ages filed in first. Perhaps she had a chance of being shown mercy after all. 6 men followed, and suddenly her throat felt deprived of oxygen, and her eyes dilated like saucers. The word escaped her lips, and she quickly covered her mouth with both hands. But the room had grown silent as a Buddhist temple. It was too late. What was that, miss? The judge spoke, making her flinch. Emily quickly turned away from the jury and spoke for what felt like the first time in weeks. Nothing. Sorry. She spoke with an awkward rise in her voice. Mind repeating what you said a moment ago? I was under the impression that you didn't speak. The judge said, "Objection, Your Honor." Her attorney stepped in. Overruled. You were saying, miss? The judge spoke. Emily swallowed hard, and her skin was as crimson as a lobster. Much like a lobster, she was in hot water now as well. Do you want to be held in contempt for lying to the court about your condition? The judge asked. No, I'm not, she hiccuped. Lying. Enlighten me on how you did not lie to the court, miss. The judge pressed. Your Honor, I made it clear she has difficulty speaking, and that she is, or in this case, was temporarily mute. The key word was temporarily. Her attorney spoke. Clearly, she speak for herself now, mister. Now would you or she care to repeat what her first spoken word was, so we can move forward with this case? The judge replied, Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney spoke before Emily placed her hand on his wrist. Overruled. The judge spoke to him. Please, Emily said to her attorney before standing to face the judge. I saw someone that looked like my dad. That's all. I'm mistaken, obviously. But it took me by surprise. So, we have it on record. Repeat the exact word you spoke for me, miss. I will not ask you again. The judge said, Daddy, that's what I said. I was mistaken. Sorry, Your Honor. Emily spoke meekly. Why don't you point out the individual you mistook for him? Would you kindly? The judge spoke. A small trickle ran between her legs, and Emily winced, hating herself. In fact, why don't we show everyone what her father looks like? Shall we? The judge said. And a projector flashed a picture of Mr. Black on the wall behind him. This is the man responsible for the death of Emily's stepfather and for her mother, who is currently in hospice care. What we are here for currently, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is to figure out whether Emily knows of his whereabouts, and 2, whether she conspired with him against her stepfather. The judge spoke. Now, isn't that a load of horse shit? A voice cackled. A man in the jury stood, and Emily's fears were confirmed. His disguise could fool most, but not her. You think she's capable of this? Hell, she couldn't even keep it together when she caught a glance of my face. Mr. Black laughed, pressing his revolver against another juror, urging them to walk up with him. The police officers and security guards all drew their weapons, but Mr. Black revealed his own weapon that was strapped to his chest. There was a rise of panic from the bystanders and the jury. "Enough!" the judge roared, and the crowd simmered down. As the Joker once said, "Let's not blow this out of proportion. I'll only take a moment of your time, one way or another." Mr. Black said, "You've got balls showing your face around here." The judge spoke, "I'm just here to make sure an innocent person doesn't go to jail. Lord knows the law has a way of fucking that up." Mr. Black replied, "I propose an exchange then. You go to jail while she goes free. That, I reckon, is how it should have been all along." The judge said, "Ha! You should go on stage and see how far that joke gets ya." Mr. Black cackled. "What's the plan here? What's your end game?" the judge asked. "It's simple. If you all want to live, you let us leave quietly. Remember, the juror I replaced is elsewhere, awaiting your assistance," Mr. Black said. The judge, a veteran from the war in Afghanistan, recognized the bomb Mr. Black had strapped to his chest. It was capable of taking out a whole block. Everyone inside this building would be cooked like a Thanksgiving turkey when all was said and done. "Drop y'all's weapons," the judge ordered. The officers followed suit. "Let's be on our way, Emily." Mr. Black spoke. A frightened moan escaped her mouth. She had no idea her father was capable of this. He would be labeled as a terrorist in the news. There was no coming back from that. "Don't waste my time, sweetheart," Mr. Black hissed, pressing his revolver against the juror's forehead. Emily whimpered and reluctantly stood up. "Can you tell me where the other juror is before you go?" the judge asked. "Good man," Mr. Black said, opening the door to the judge's quarters. Through there was a quick exit to the parking lot. "I left a note with an address under my juror seat. If anyone stops me, that place will blow too," Mr. Black said. Emily gagged as her nerves started getting the better of her. This was all too much to take in. But Mr. Black tugged her inside by the collar of her shirt, urging her to keep moving, and they ran to the exit door. Outside, there were 2 cars waiting for them. Mr. Black shoved his hostage to the floor and slammed the door shut behind him. Emily eyed both cars in confusion. She yelped when she felt something hot sting her arm. Emily looked up at her father as everything around her grew brighter. "Why?" she whimpered. "Can't risk you having second thoughts," Mr. Black replied with a wink, removing the small needle from her arm. Emily was too weak to resist when he laid her down in the back seat of a Chrysler 300. He rode in a different car, and she passed out before they drove away. 4. Emily awoke with a start in what felt like another lifetime. She was cocooned in a hammock, ready to hatch into a new life, it seemed. Her sluggish eyes registered a clustered forest of coconut palms around her, and a man sitting at a nearby table. He wore a straw hat and was sipping on a pina colada. "Welcome back," Mr. Black said. The ocean was a shimmering shade of teal in the sunlight, roaring in the distance. "Is Mom okay?" Emily slurred. "She'll be fine." Just when you think all the weird stuff has been told, the next story will make you think again. Nature or nurture? Sensitive content, serial killers. Nature or nurture? That is the question. Before today, I thought I knew where I stood on the issue. But now, friends, I am not really sure what to think. To give you context, a few weeks ago, after Mother passed, I was finally able to clean out her bedroom. The medical equipment was, of course, quite pristine, but the smell and debris from her glacial demise was simply overwhelming, and it took me days to clear paths in the room. I found the letters in her closet. Even now, it takes me a moment to adjust myself to the mental impact of those pages and pages of her precise Palmer script, describing in the most flowery of language a lifetime of barely requited love. The only mention of me in any of the letters was it, as in, I can get rid of it. My cold, sterile, demanding mother spent decades writing the most passionate and absolutely painful to read, lurid letters to her one-time lover who never once responded. The wrinkled envelopes I found in an old Avon perfume box, each bearing a scarlet ink, "Return to sender," returned from the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it just preyed on my mind, and I could not get the thoughts out of my head until I took action. Perhaps you may relate to this, perhaps not. So, friends, I eventually found myself in somewhat of a fugue state, an hour into the 2-hour drive up north from Dallas on 75 to US 69, which leads to Penitentiary Street, and then to the Big Mac, a maximum security prison once known for its annual prisoner rodeo, now infamous for its terrible conditions, riots, and death row prisoners, one of whom could be my father. To visit anyone at the Big Mac takes some time. Visiting someone like Louis Landry Reese takes time, and one's absolute forbearance for the most intimately probing of questions and fingers. It wouldn't surprise me if you hadn't heard of Louis Landry Reese and his swath of known and unknown rapes, kidnappings, and killings. But you will be able to find all you want with a few searches. Maybe you know exactly who he is. Driving under the peeling, white-arched grille Oklahoma State Penitentiary sign, buttressed by decaying, similarly painted white bricks pillars, I pulled into one of the few designated parking spots for Big Mac visitors. I turned off the Volvo's engine and sat for a moment, perhaps a bit longer than a moment, with my mind ticking to different thoughts about how maybe today I would finally learn who my father really was, about how Mother would never talk about him, about how she would punish me when I kept asking and asking, and about how Brandy, my old receptionist, would tease me about Volvos being only for short-haired women who shopped at Home Depot. After a bit, the rising sun. Visitors to the Big Mac must arrive very early. Warmed up the air in the car to the point my face began prickling with sweat, and I was brought back from my reminiscing. I opened the door, swung my legs out, and made my way to enter the prison. As I mentioned, the passage from our daily world to that of people such as Louis Landry Reese is rife with probing exams, delays, and grunting guards who entertain themselves with snickering under the breath asides. In the Shawshankian depths of the Big Mac, the black and blue rayon bulk that was my escorting guard halted at metal door exactly like the dozen we had already passed. He turned back toward me and asked without much concern, "Are you sure?" "It is true, friends. I am not a physically intimidating person. Not tall, not wide, not much hair, nor chin. With my decidedly pointed nose and very small teeth, Mother thought it the height of ironic hilarity that I chose the dental profession. A squealing mouse is what she called me, although, to be fair, I learned at a very young age that squealing, no matter how much pain or discomfort, only prolonged such experiences. So squealing is something I have not done in a very long time. I stood straight and focused on how I was a respected professional, how I would be walking out of this dank hellhole of sweating brick and would never ever return, while Louis Landry Reese would only leave feet first. How I would finally find out the truth. "Open the door," I whispered. Greasy tendrils of hair leaked from his scalp, down his shiny face onto pale, meaty forearms, creating a tangled and ripped curtain through which I could see a silver blue eye cutting from me to the closing door of the room and back to me. As the door shut, he lifted his head up, and I was absolutely shocked to see his sunken and caved face with a navel of puckered mouth. Louis Landry Reese had no teeth, literally. Then I heard the strangest sound, like a dog choking and barking at the same time. It was me, laughing hysterically. Louis Landry Reese did not appreciate my levity. Friends, not at all. He tried to stand, but the chains around his wrist went through a steel loop, bolted to the table, kept him stooped over as he shouted at me. The harsh ratcheting sound of the chains sawing back and forth through the loop assaulted my ears almost as much as his gummy-mouthed curses. The whole episode lasted only a few moments before a phalanx of guards rushed into the room, with one picking me physically up and setting me outside. To be frank, I do not really remember much too clearly from that point. I numbly followed the uniform in front of me and fuzzily collected my belongings before staggering into the Oklahoma sun. I made my way to the Volvo and began the drive back to Dallas. The shrieked words of my father still ricocheting between my ears, and he was indeed my father. One look at his face and those colorless, watery blue eyes that were identical to my own left no doubt. At least to me. I think Louis Landry Reese thought so too, even though he screamed the most terrible things about Mother and how I was just a dentist and not like the others, which is why I was so stunned and really driving on remote control until I got back to Dallas and pulled off Harry Hines into my driveway. The implications of Louis Landry Reese knowing my occupation meant he knew of me. But what did he know about me? I was thinking this over as I went to the basement to check on Brandy. She had finally stopped trying to pull her wrists from the restraints, but it seemed she had really stopped doing much of anything. Even when I clicked the pliers together, she barely trembled. That was disappointing. But since Brandy was down to her last 3 teeth, 16, 24, and 41, it was probably time to discharge her and find my next patient. I tell you all this, friends, because contrary to the rantings of Louis Landry Reese, I am not just a dentist. I am the dentist. And Louis Landry Reese also said the others. So, I am posting my story on this dark website as a message in the bottle to see if maybe I have family, others like me, to ask, what do you think? Nature or nurture? The above story is ended. Let's listen to the next story. The Unnatural Diary. Part 1. The Unintended Discovery. Dust swirled in the dim light as Sarah pushed aside a stack of brittle newspapers, her fingers brushing against something unexpected, soft, worn leather. She reached into the box of forgotten books and relics, pulling free an old, weathered diary. Its edges were frayed with time, the cover nearly stripped of its once proud embossing, now smooth and cool beneath her touch. A faint residue of salt clung to its surface, as if it had weathered years of quiet decay or been touched by the sea itself. Intrigued, she carefully pried it open near the middle, where thick, textured pages crackled with age. The paper felt different, denser than usual, almost like parchment. The ink, though faded, carried an unusual shimmer, as if the words still pulsed with some lingering energy, revealing a chilling passage. I had to move quickly, but the floorboards betrayed me, groaning beneath my steps as I crept through the darkened hall. It was close. I could feel its snarling breath, cold and damp, seeping through the walls, making them feel thinner than they were. The air was thick with the weight of its presence. I had to make it to the kitchen. I had to get to the closest bag of consecrated salt before it was too late. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The words read like a story, yet something about them felt strangely real. and weren't meant to entertain, but to warn. She flipped another page, the dry parchment whispering as it moved, and something slipped loose. A note, a single yellowed slip of paper, fluttered to the attic floor. Sarah bent to retrieve it, her pulse quickening as she read the hastily scrawled words. "If you've found this, it already knows. It already knows?" The words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. What does that mean? What already knows? Shaking off the unease, she set the diary aside, convincing herself it was just a very old diary. Nothing more. She returned to cleaning, determined to finish the task before indulging her curiosity. Later, with the attic finally organized, Sarah sank into the old desk chair she had recently dusted off and pulled from the corner. It paired well with an antique desk she had just cleaned off, a piece that had likely sat buried beneath clutter for years. Exhaustion giving way to curiosity, she reached for the diary, opening it to the first page, her fingers brushing over the worn pages, coming to the inside of the cover, where a passage so intimate it felt as though she was intruding on something deeply personal, was scrawled in elegant handwriting. "To my beautiful Colette, may the enchantment of these pages cradle your precious memories and bridge the distance between us, keeping our hearts forever intertwined. With eternal love, Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow." Beneath the inscription, in a more delicate script, another line had been added. "Given to me by my love on Saturday, February 28th, 1953. Sarah's pulse quickened. The names, Roderick Shadowthorn, Moonvale Hollow, felt almost otherworldly, like something plucked from a forgotten fairy tale. Sarah turned to the first entry, March 2nd, 1953. "My dearest new diary, I am excited to begin writing. I can scarcely believe my fortune. Has it only been weeks since I met Roderick? It feels as though I have known him forever, as though our souls recognized one another long before our eyes had ever met. He is unlike anyone I have ever known. His presence is both briskly confident and gentle, and his words laced with a wisdom as though he has seen lifetimes beyond my own. Fascinates me. When I am with him, the world feels richer and brighter, as if I have stepped beyond the veil and into something wondrous. His world is unlike anything I could have imagined, mystical, brimming with enchantment and secrets woven through everything there. He speaks of things I cannot yet comprehend, yet I believe every word. When he takes my hand, I swear I can feel the pulse of something ancient and powerful. He calls himself a hermit, or rather, that's what others call him. But to me, he is nothing short of extraordinary. Everything about him is mesmerizing. His long, dark waves that frame his face, the depth of his warm brown eyes, and oh, the way he looks at me, as if I am the only thing that exists in his world. It sends my heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. I have never felt so seen, so cherished. If this is love, then let me remain lost in it forever. I do not know what the future holds, nor how we will balance our lives together. But I know I wish to be with Roderick forever, and I will follow wherever this enchantment leads. Forever hopeful, Colette. Wow. Sarah exhaled the word, unable to stop the tinge of jealousy creeping into her voice. To feel that in love, to be cherished like that. She had once known that feeling, back when she and Neil were still wrapped in the bliss of their early days. But those days had faded, worn thin by time and disappointment, until all that remained was silence and a divorce finalized 3 years ago. Now, her world revolved around work, the occasional night out with friends, and a growing reluctance to let anyone get too close again. She shook off the thought and turned the page, only to feel as though something else was guiding her hand. The diary fell open to a blank page, yet at the top, written in the same elegant script, a date had already been inscribed. March 15th, 2025. Sarah's breath hitched. Her pulse pounded in her ears. That's today's date. She stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. Her mind raced for an explanation, but none made sense. The diary was old, decades old. How could this be? A chill swept through the attic, and she rubbed her arms, trying to shake the unease pressing against her chest. It's just a coincidence, a weird, creepy coincidence. Forcing a nervous laugh, she muttered, "Okay, that's enough reading for today. I just need a shower, food, and..." Before she could finish, a brilliant light erupted from the diary, flooding the attic in a blinding radiance. The air crackled, thick with an energy she could feel rushing over her skin. A high-pitched hum filled her ears as the pages of the diary flared open, their edges glowing with an unnatural heat. Sarah barely had time to scream before the light consumed her. Then, silence. The attic stood empty. The diary lay undisturbed on the desk. A new entry had appeared on the once blank page. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will. The sentence trailed off, the ink still wet, as if waiting to be finished. Part 2. The vanished sister. As the last of the evening sun faded into a moonless sky, Gloria settled in beside her husband, the familiar hum of their favorite television show filling the room. The night was calm, uneventful, until the phone shattered the quiet with a sharp trill. Gloria glanced at the caller ID. A slight frown creased her brow. Miranda? Sarah's friend? Why would she be calling? Perplexed, she rose from the couch, murmuring to her husband, "I'll be right back." Pressing the phone to her ear, she answered hesitantly, "Hello? Miranda? Hey, Gloria. I'm sorry for calling so late." Miranda's voice wavered, the hesitation in her tone setting Gloria instantly on edge. "I got your number from Sarah's records." Gloria's throat tightened. Sarah's records? "We were wondering if everything was okay with her. She hasn't been to work in about a week, and we're starting to get worried. We've tried calling, leaving messages, but she hasn't answered. This isn't like her at all. And..." Miranda hesitated before continuing, her voice barely above a whisper. "She missed an important deadline for a major project on Wednesday." Gloria gripped the phone tighter. "Sarah? Missing work? Ignoring calls? Failing to meet a deadline?" The words barely registered as the realization slowly settled into fear. She hadn't spoken to her sister in nearly 2 weeks. That wasn't unusual for them. Life had a way of pulling them in different directions, but Sarah not showing up for work and no word to anyone, that was impossible. That was not Sarah, and suddenly, the quiet night didn't feel so peaceful anymore. The familiar rhythm of her world began to close in. "Where is my sister?" By the time the police got involved, Gloria had already exhausted every possible explanation. Even Sarah's ex-husband Neil had flown into town, trying to find out what he could from their mutual acquaintances and his family in the area. But the more they searched, the deeper the mystery became. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no evidence of foul play. Sarah's car remained parked in the driveway. Her purse sat neatly on the dining table, car keys beside it. The house, meticulously arranged, just as she always kept it. Security footage only deepened the mystery. The last recording showed Sarah arriving home from work last Friday, locking the door behind her, and then nothing. No one entered. No one left, leaving the house feeling eerily undisturbed, as if she had vanished without a trace. Her co-workers, Amalia and Miranda, had been the first to raise the alarm. They knew their friend would not miss work, especially not a major deadline, not without calling, not without an explanation. This was an impossibility for someone as methodical and precise as Sarah. So where had she gone? Then there was the opened diary in the attic, sitting on the antique desk in the attic. Its cracked leather cover bore the weight of years. It wasn't Sarah's. Gloria knew that much. The pages, thick and time-worn, had been left open as if abandoned in haste. And there, scrawled in elegant yet unsettling handwriting, was a date, March 15th, 2025, last Saturday, the day after Sarah was last seen. The police had skimmed through the diary, dismissing it as nothing more than an old journal Sarah had stumbled upon. Perhaps she had been reading it, maybe even planning to write something inspired by it. After all, She had only moved into the house last October. The previous owner, a woman in her 90s, had passed away the year before, and her children had taken what little they wanted. Antiques, heirlooms, family photographs. The rest had been left behind in their rush to sell the house. But as Gloria sat at the old antique desk staring at the diary, unease slithered through her. She reached for it hesitantly, fingers grazing the worn leather cover. A whisper of movement stirred the air, though the room was still. The moment she picked up the book, a chill pricked deep in her bones. Something told her that Sarah hadn't just disappeared. She had been taken. Part 3, the final entry. Taking a steadying breath, Gloria flipped through the pages, only to have them land on the last recorded entry again. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will... The ink shimmered in shifting, iridescent hues of black and blue, as if the words were still being formed, not yet complete. A low hum vibrated through the attic, the air thickening with something unnatural. Gloria clenched her jaw. An aching sense of dread settled in her chest. This wasn't just a diary. This was something else. Something supernatural. Sarah, what did you do? With a deep breath, she turned the page. And Gabba, March 20th, 2025. She keeps running again. I'll find her again. She will tell me where Colette is. She does not belong. She is not Colette. She fights, but she cannot escape. She will stay. If I cannot have my Colette, I found her again. She hides. These people cannot protect her from me. She is strong, but endurance lasts only so long. Gloria's stomach twisted. Sarah was alive, but she wasn't just missing. She was trapped. Somewhere beyond this world, desperation clawed at her chest. There had to be something, some way to help Sarah. Flipping frantically through the brittle pages, she stopped when she found an entry dated April 10th, 1956. The ink was uneven, smudged in places, as though written in haste. April 10th, 1956. I have kept it at bay with consecrated salt. I believe I have found a way to seal this diary. It was forged by Roderick's own hands, a doorway between both worlds. It seems impossible to destroy, but I must protect my husband, my children. The salt has bound the door. He cannot come through that way again. I did love him once, but what he was becoming, now he is lost to rage and darkness. No longer the man I loved. He is something else now. A vile creature. I pray no one ever finds this diary. I have been told, soak cloth in sea salt. Wrap the diary within it. The realms will be severed. If this works, this will be my last entry. If it doesn't, God help me. The smudged words ended abruptly. Gloria's hands trembled as she closed the diary. She knew what she had to do. Colette had sealed the diary once before. Gloria would do it again. Gloria searched the attic, her hands trembling, looking for any salt that may have been left. Thankfully, Sarah had cleaned and organized the space not too long ago, making it easier to find what she needed. But would it work? Would it not only seal the diary, but also bring Sarah back? Her fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. An old tin can with the words "Consecrated Salt" embossed on its worn surface. Inside, a thick, heavy bag of salt remained untouched. Waiting, anxious, Gloria quickly opened the diary to the most recent entry. Her heart pounded as she poured a thick line of salt down the center of the open pages, then traced a protective circle around it. She didn't know what she was doing, but she had to do something. It had already been a week since Sarah disappeared. The air shifted. A strange, oppressive stillness pressed down on the attic. Then, the diary lifted off the desk. A plume of smoke curled from its pages as an eerie glow pulsed from within. The pages flared open, flipping wildly as a gust of wind erupted through the attic. Bolts of crackling light shot from the diary, slamming into the wooden beams and shaking the very foundation of the house. Gloria stumbled back, shielding her face as the attic groaned, the walls pulsating as if the house itself were alive. Then, a scream, low and guttural, full of rage and loss, a scream that was not human. And just as suddenly as it began, everything stilled. The diary dropped to the floor with a final thud, its edges slightly singed. The attic fell silent, the air refreshed into somewhat normalcy. Gloria hesitated before stepping forward. The diary lay motionless, its pages now eerily still. A single, final entry had appeared. March 21st, 2025. She is gone. My Colette has left me. I am nothing without her. Oh, Colette. I am so sorry. I loved you so. I waited. You never came. I am no more, finally, released from my agony. Then, without warning, the diary slammed shut. Gloria's breath caught. Where is Sarah? Please, give me my sister back, she cried, voice breaking. A soft thud echoed from downstairs. Heart pounding, Gloria bolted down the steps, and there, lying in the center of the living room, was Sarah. Dazed, shaken, a little battered, but very much alive. Sarah blinked at her, disoriented. Gloria? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. You're here. What happened? Tears blurred Gloria's vision as she rushed forward, pulling her sister into a fierce hug. Oh, Sarah, you're home. Sarah shuddered against her. I saw him. Roderick. He was a monster, Gloria, twisted by rage. He was searching for Colette, furious that she had betrayed him, that she had moved on, married someone else. Gloria cupped Sarah's face, her thumbs brushing against her cheeks, wiping the tears. You're safe now. It's over. Sarah's gaze flickered toward the attic door. Her voice was quieter now, wary. "Is it?" Gloria took a slow breath. "I think..." He finally found peace. After all these years, he was released from his pain. Sarah nodded, but unease lingered in her expression. "Then let's make sure no one ever opens that diary again," Gloria agreed, and without hesitation, they climbed back up to the attic, grabbing the diary. Then, under the moon's watchful glow, they carried it out back, straight to the fire pit. As the flames consumed the aged leather and time-worn pages, an unnatural wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the last echoes of Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow. And for the first time in 70 years, Moonvale Hollow would be forgotten forever. Or so they hoped. The next story will begin now. To the person who buys my house. Months ago, I uprooted my entire life and moved across the country with very little plan. My wife left me out of the blue. With no tether, I cashed out my 401k and threw caution to the wind. I drove until I saw snow before deciding to try out the small town life. After nailing down a full-time job and growing tired of life in the town's only hotel, I reached out to a realtor and asked her to show me the house that's been on the market the longest. A fixer-upper was just what I needed. The realtor didn't have much information on the home outside of the basics, but I was sold as soon as I saw it. 3 stories, isolated deep in the woods. What more could a man looking to start over with a project ask for? After closing, I was given a fill folder containing all the important information. With all the standard documents was a handwritten letter from the previous homeowner. The contents of the letter have me questioning if I made the right choice, but I've never been one to turn down a challenge. I have typed the contents of the letter below. To the person who buys my house, congratulations on the purchase of your new home. Or perhaps, should I say, you're welcome for your new home. I can only imagine what type of person you may be. A first-time home buyer? A newlywed couple just starting out? A growing family looking for more space? A retiree longing to be away from the hustle and bustle of the city? Or even just an investor looking for rental properties? The possibilities are endless, but no less exciting. Just as exciting as when my late husband and I first purchased the property so many years ago. The tree covering so far off the main road made such a serene setting. We just couldn't picture ourselves living anywhere else. However, all things must come to an end. Such is life. I'm not as young as I once was. My children worried for me out here all alone. Or so they say. My oldest daughter decided the property was too much for me to care for on my own anymore, and encouraged me to move to the old folks' home in the next town. As loath as I was to leave the home we spent such wonderful years in, I could no longer argue with her. The upkeep was getting to be a little much for these old bones. I agreed on one condition: that the home not be put up for sale until my death. So, if you are receiving this letter, I have shuffled off this mortal coil. That also means that the house has most likely sat vacant for some time. In that case, there are a few matters of housekeeping you should be aware of. As you may have noticed when you viewed the property, the house is quite the old gal. Her 3 stories stand tall and formidable in the dense forest surrounding it. Though the trees tower over her, she will not be cowed. The roof has held up better than we ever expected with so many trees around. It was replaced in 2018, another urging of my oldest daughter, though it had only a few cosmetic issues at the time. The trees closest to the home are sturdy and hardly ever dare to drop their branches directly on the roof. By the time you move in, it may be time for a fresh coat of paint, though I found the house does prefer to be a light blue with white trim. She likes to stand out amongst the darkness of the forest. I'll never forget the way the old gal gleamed at Christmas time, with string lights shining bright enough to light up the snow all around. Oh, I do hope you have the most wondrous Christmases there. Anyway, I've gotten off track. Yes, the house will require a new coat of paint, and I'm sure you will decorate the inside as you see fit. Before you start to move too much around, be aware that some of the items in the house have been strategically placed. For you to fully understand what a treasure you have just purchased, I feel it is pertinent for me to tell you a little story. My Reginald and I purchased the home fully furnished before any of our children were brought into this world. The first year we lived there was pure bliss. Young and in love, we dedicated almost all of our time to each other. My husband fondly referred to this time as our honeymoon phase. One of our favorite activities was exploring the vast property surrounding us. When the weather did not permit roaming, we explored the home itself, though from the outside it appears as any manor in the woods would. Inside is much to be discovered. During that first year, we enjoyed the convenience of it being fully furnished and move-in ready. But over time, I yearned to decorate, to make the space my own. Reginald, ever the obedient husband, humored me. We started by taking down every painting that hung on the walls, deciding which to keep, which to sell away, and which to simply move to a different area. That is when the first odd discovery was made. Behind a great many of the paintings, there were holes, right in the plaster walls. Some appeared to be methodically cut in perfect squares. Others, as though a fist was punched straight through it. We, of course, decided that those would eventually be covered back up. I piled the painting up in the drawing room, and set about cleaning the walls. By the end of the day, I had yet to decide on what exactly to do with them. So I let them lie and went to bed. In the morning, however, they were all hung perfectly back in their spots, as if all my work had never happened. For days, I assumed Reginald had done it, and he assumed I had. We ultimately didn't speak of it until it was too late. When my Reginald started back to work as supervisor of the factory in town, I resumed my endeavor to make the home feel like it was mine. I hated the big rugs scattered all around the place. I've always preferred a nice hardwood floor. No need for carpets that hold all the dirt and hair that's dragged in. The furniture was easy enough to move out of my way, and the rugs all rolled up nicely. I was mighty proud of my hard work until I got a good look at the wood. Large, dark, discolored splotches marred what should have been beautiful hardwood hiding under those ghastly rugs, which I'm sure you've seen. Unfortunately, much like the paintings, the rugs remained. I'd go into more detail, but some of the full truths have been lost to time. But I will tell you, be careful what you look behind or under. Though the house allowed me to dust and paint and add decor as my heart desired, it did not allow me to leave any of its secret spots uncovered. Behind dressers, cabinets, doors, paintings, mirrors, and under couches, chairs, and beds, the house hides. After the first year, I gave up trying to rearrange and became content with adding a few of my own touches here and there. I think that once the house realized I'd stopped trying to change it so much, it settled down. For a while at least, we entered a time of peace again. But the monotony of loneliness began to get to me. Thankfully, we soon welcomed our oldest daughter. As soon as she arrived, the house awoke with laughter and joy. All hours of the night, she would giggle, and the house seemed to echo with it, those echoes long lingering even after she fell asleep. As we welcomed more children, it seemed that no matter how much we tied, the house remained scattered with toys. It was as if I'd turn my back and they'd all jump right off the shelf and resume their places on the floor. The never-ending chore of putting away made me weary to my bones. In a stroke of wisdom, my Reginald decided one summer to send the children to my mother's for a week. She lived on the coast, never one for the colder air where we chose to live. We didn't see her often, and the children did love her so. Off they went without a complaint, leaving my love and I alone for the first time in over a decade. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. That first night, it was as if we were newlyweds again. But I won't traumatize you with any of that. We felt so young again, only waking when the sun finally shone through our bedroom window, with no rush to feed the masses. When we finally emerged from our bed a little after noon, we walked into an unexpected scene. Every toy, book, pen, shoe, and piece of sports equipment that belonged to the children had been strewn about the first floor in the most uncivilized manner. There was no question that the house had been perfectly clean the night before. Our first thought was that we'd been burgled, that someone had broken in, thinking we'd all left for the coast. The only problem is, we told no one the children were leaving, and we had no neighbors to have noticed their departure. Regardless, we checked for signs of forced entry on all the doors and windows. Finding nothing, we were forced to believe it was whatever force we had once felt in our home, agitated with us once more. As you've probably ascertained, the house is very particular. We had come to accept not being able to move the furniture or pictures, but were only just realizing that the house did not like many of the new things we'd brought in either. How many times had I picked certain toys up off the floor, only to find them there again in the morning? How many times had I unfairly blamed the children for messes they claimed they knew nothing about? That morning, we saw the truth of the matter, and I knew something had to change. The children didn't deserve my anger or anxiety. They were not to blame. When they returned, I was sure to tell them as much. But before then, we had to find a way to coexist again with the forces in the house. What should have been a week of relaxation and reconnecting became a week of trial and error. On the first day, we tidied the house, putting everything back where we thought everything should go. Each room made perfect. Then we waited for the first item to fall out of place. As if the house was testing us, it took hours for anything to happen that first day. Then it started, slowly at first, giving us time to notice the items that were out of place, time to correct. It seemed to go in order of the things that bothered it the most, or maybe just the longest. The first toy to go was a set of bells we'd gotten when our oldest was small. The set was a popular toy amongst all our babies. With our youngest being nearly 8 at the time, these bells hadn't truly rung joyously through the house in years, yet they always made their way off the shelf onto the rug. Our family's peace was more important than any sentimentality, or at least that's what my husband and I agreed. And into the bin they went. Quickly, we noticed patterns. Toys that made too much noise. Shoes that left scuffs on the floor. Sports equipment that may or may not have been involved in a few broken windows and busted light bulbs. Books that sat too heavy on the overburdened bookshelves. Room by room we went, removing any and all items the house found to be offensive. It was by no means an easy undertaking. So many items had many more years of use left in them. But knowing what I knew, I could no longer sacrifice my sanity for a few boxes full of possessions. When the last box of offending items left the property, it was as if the house itself took a deep, calming breath. I hadn't quite realized just how stressed I'd been feeling until I didn't feel it anymore. Weight I'd grown accustomed to bearing eased off my shoulders. The air was lighter, the lights were brighter, and the house even seemed to smell better. Not that there was a noticeable bad smell before. Everything just felt better. That night, Reginald and I slept deeply for the first time in years, waking refreshed and ready for anything. I was ready for my children to come home. This week had been the longest we'd been apart since the youngest was born. I'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital that time, but that's neither here nor there. We had 2 more days before my mother would return them to us, sun-kissed and spoiled rotten in the best way. In those 2 days, I made time to sit quietly and listen to the house the way I used to when it was just Reginald and myself. Familiar creaks and groans greeted my ears. My senses were filled with the house. The smell of wood, water, earth, detergents, fabric, food, all seemed to swirl around me. For a long while, it was all just the normal feelings of home, of any home. Every house I'd ever lived in had the same smells and sounds. I assume every house in the whole world has the same base set of smells, sounds, and lights. I knew there was something past that, though, here. So I waited. A few months back, I'd read a book on meditation, hoping to help lift some of the stress I'd been buried under. While I waited, I took a few quests from my readings. I methodically relaxed each muscle, starting at my toes and working my way to my head. I felt each breath as it traveled in and out of my lungs. I tried to tune my ears inward to listen to the beating of my heart, attempting to hear the blood rushing through my veins. That's when I finally heard the breathing. It wasn't my own. It was offbeat of mine. Reginald wasn't home. We had no pets, but the slow, deep, steady breaths were just a whisper in my ear. I focused with all my might on the sound, hoping to pinpoint the direction it was coming from. Realization dawned on me. I was all around me, as if I was inside a lung. Then, a heartbeat, slower than my own, reverberated around me. Slowly, I opened my eyes. What I saw changed everything. Ever so lightly, the walls billowed in and out. Ever so slightly, the chandelier above my head rhythmically bobbed, as if contracting, thrumming. Everything in the central family room moved in a steady beat. How many days had we spent in this room? The majority of our lives circulated in this room, where we were most often all together as a family, the way a family room should be used. We often joked that this room was the heart of the house, because there was always so much love here. We were not wrong. This room truly holds the heart of the home. You may think I'm crazy, but I am telling you, here and now, the house is alive. It is not haunted. There are no goblins or ghouls. The house itself is a living, breathing being, a being that I have cared for, just as it has cared for me, for more years than I care to count. You see, my daughter never believed. She did not understand. When I finally agreed that I was too old to care for the house on my own, it was because the house told me so. Not her. I was growing too old to care for it, and in turn, it could no longer care for me. It needs someone younger, someone to breathe new life into it again. And if you care for it, it will care for you. When tended to properly, it will multiply your life and give you more than you can ever imagine. I do hope Carmen found the right person to take on the challenge. I pray the house does not miss us too terribly much. If you follow the rules, then it should grow to love you, too, I'm sure. With love, Cynthia. Rule 1. Don't move the furniture. Rule 2. Don't leave any holes uncovered. Rule 3. Don't make changes. Only fix things that break. Rule 4. Don't put anything on the mantle in the bedroom. Rule 5. Never throw balls inside. Rule 6. Never scream at your partner inside. On the grounds is fine. Rule 7. Always walk gently. Rule 8. Always lock the doors. Rule 9. Always listen to the house. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. I have lived in the house for a week now. What I thought to be the ramblings of a crazy old woman who wanted nothing more than to stay with her home have quickly become undeniable truths. On my second night, the house welcomed me in a way only it could have. I'm not sure if this makes me just as crazy as her, but I vowed to care for this home as long as it cares for me. We're off to a great start. We think it's over, but in fact, it's just begun. The next story will thrill you in a completely different way. Cotuit Circle. Let's keep pretending. I whispered those 3 words with a slight slur, the buzz of 2 champagne cocktails still churning through my veins. The air was thick with that sleepy summertime vibe, bugs buzzing and crickets chirping their seasonal symphony. I tucked a copper-colored curl behind my ear and squeezed Nick's hand tighter as we strolled through the canopied streets, the golden sunlight still warm on our shoulders. At dinner, we had joked about being rich retirees, just stopping for a quick bite before returning to our yacht for a summer soiree. Sweetheart, you can be whoever you want to be, Nick grinned, slowing down his lanky stride to steady my swaying steps. In fact, I have a surprise for you. Follow me." We interlaced our fingers and ascended the hill towards Cotuit Circle. Backed by a ridge of evergreen, the house stood out amongst the newly renovated mansions, its creamy white woodwork and deep sage trim, a charming reflection of timeless architecture. Despite being worn and weathered, the house seemed to boast of its own importance, like a royal battleship returning from war. The setting sunlight sparkled off the towering, tapered windows that flanked each side of the entryway. Fragrant honeysuckle climbed the porch railings in intricate swirls, weaving in, out, and around each delicately carved post. I ran my fingers along the smooth address welded into the bars of the gate. 3, 5, 4, Cotuit Circle, Ka-tuet. I love saying those words, I murmured to myself. Click. Nick opened the gate with a grand flourish. Today, on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, we are touring Gemma Grant's opulent Cotuit Circle home. Champagne wishes and caviar dreams and all that jazz. Nicholas, whose house is this? I fixed a broken pipe here last week. The old lady is gone for the summer. Stop stressing. It's fine. I hesitated. Nick tilted his head in a knowing glance that wordlessly implied, "Trust me." I exhaled deeply to calm my nerves and stretched my arms overhead. "Shit. Ow!" I moaned as my thumb caught on a thorn from the crimson, rose-lined trellis. A tiny trickle of red snaked down my wrist. I pressed my thumb to my lips and rolled my eyes. "I'm fine," I murmured. Nick kissed my hand and guided me through the gate to the front door. He entered the same code into the panel above the door handle, and it creaked open. The essence of the interior washed over me. A stale bouquet of black tea, sugared orange cookies, dried lavender, and my grandmother's mille fleur perfume. My throat burned. I steadied myself against the velvet damask-covered wall and struggled to appear composed. "Do you smell that?" I whispered. "Old lady perfume and dust?" "Yeah, a little. We can leave if you're nervous, but I swear no one is here." I shook my head and hurriedly wiped my watery eyes. "No, show me around," I managed to utter. The house oozed opulence. Thick ruby-red rugs with dizzying geometric patterns covered the chestnut wood floors. Centered in the middle of the entryway was a grand staircase that spiraled up to the second-story landing. Ornate sconces and buttery yellow candles marked the walls. I ran my hand along the carved banister and watched the closing streaks of golden sunlight glitter down through the narrow windows. The central parlor overflowed with collectibles, built-in bookcases full of gold leaf books, decorative lamps, and miniature figurines. Shadows danced along the walls in a forlorn choreography. But despite the soaring high ceilings, the interior appeared to be suffocating itself. There was no room to breathe. "Jem, look, your favorite." Nick appeared completely unaware of the existential crisis brewing inside me as he placed the needle on a vintage Victrola and sauntered toward me. Billie Holiday's voice filled the room. "I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places." I wrapped my arms around Nick's neck, laid my head on his chest, and tried to ignore my rising apprehension. Tick, tick, tick. The second hand on the grandfather clock marked the rhythm of our movement. "I am so pleased you've arrived," a voice rang out. As the record player screeched to a stop, I froze. The known voice resonated deep within me. A gaunt, withered hand delicately placed the record needle to the side. The woman's frail body was stooped over like a wilting blossom. Spotted skin stretched tightly over her bones like sheer sheets of tissue paper. "Mrs. Danforth, I am so sorry. My wife has always wanted to tour one of the Cotuit Circle homes, and I knew she'd especially love to see yours. We didn't mean to intrude. We're going." Nick spoke hurriedly, with his head bowed down. "Nonsense, Nicholas. What a jest. You certainly know I was expecting you both. I'll make us some tea." Her voice clanged out like crystal, delicate and precise, inconsistent with her shriveled appearance. I watched her curved form stagger toward the kitchen door and felt like I was grasping at the last shreds of a dream that would soon be forgotten. I didn't know her, or did I? I began to mouth, "What the—" to Nick as he grabbed my hand and led me toward the door. The hearty voice resonated from deep within the kitchen. "Nicholas, can you see to the water faucet in the powder room again? It's no longer leaking, but I cannot seem to get the water hot." Nick shrugged and dropped my hand. "She's old and confused. Have a cup of tea and we'll go. It'll only take me a few minutes to fix the water. Do not leave me alone with her." I shut my eyes and begged. When I opened them, he was already gone. The tea kettle released a shrill squeal, and seconds later, she shuffled out. A stack of cookies and 2 porcelain cups of tea sloshing over on a delicate tray. "Take a seat, love," she said sweetly, as she set the tray on the table and shakily handed me a cup. I positioned myself on the edge of the velvet amethyst couch and ran my finger along the sage ivy swirls of the teacup. I watched the steam rise, desperate to avoid eye contact. "Oh dear. Looks like the roses snagged you too," she observed, as she held her hand next to mine. Along her thumb was a shiny white scar, identical to the thin red cut on mine. I winced. "Please have a cookie. They are delightful with this tea." I picked up the iced orange cookie and inhaled deeply. I love orange cookies. I know, it's your favorite recipe, she replied. A trickle of sweat ran down the back of my neck. This old lady was definitely unhinged. Thank you for your kindness, but we should be leaving. It's getting late. I glanced at the clock once more. The second hand appeared frozen in time. Oh, shush. The night is young. I even pulled some books off the shelf this morning to show you. I wondered if she would find it rude if I pulled out my phone and texted Nick to hurry the hell up. She slid a stack of leather-bound books across the table and slinked so close to me that our knees touched. The proximity of her presence made me uneasy. I set the teacup and cookie back on the tray, picked up the top book, and crossed my legs away from her. So, Mrs. Danforth, what do you read? Words, 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 she smirked. I raised my eyebrows to acknowledge her reference. My mind flooded with long-forgotten quotes. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I opened the book. Oh, this is a photo album. Is this you and your family? My shoulders relaxed as I slowly turned the pages. The photos all had the same muted rust color that designated the passage of time. The images captured a variety of milestones: lake vacations, ski trips, vintage cars, graduations, and birthday parties. Smiling, happy people. Yes, dear. Long before I lived here on Cotuit Circle. Ka tu et. I love saying those words, she mused. Her unnerving remark made me shiver. I set the album on the table and stood to find Nick, but something caught my eye. The album opened to an entire page of a little girl in lavender-striped pajamas, copper-colored curls. I leaned down and flipped the pages faster and faster. The little girl appeared everywhere. Her first day of school, the day she got her ears pierced, the time she fell out of a tree and fractured her wrist. The little girl was me. The saccharine voice soured into a hoarse whisper. Let's keep pretending. The above story ends, but never stops. Here is another story that will not disappoint you. I dreamed of heaven. There's a smell to death, and I'm not talking about the stench of rotting fat and escaping gases. It's the smell of death's presence. It changes the air molecules to make them sour. They slice your nose as you inhale, and they grate against your skin as you walk through its cloud. The effect lingers. The more bodies, the more intense it is, like a heat map of last breaths. There wasn't a pure atom in the basement. It was suffocating. I was sitting against the wall. My dead eyes pointed to the sky, and my dropped chin pointed to Earth's core. My hands were blue, and my face was pale. My legs were twisted in such an uncomfortable way, but there was nothing I could do. Literally. I couldn't even breathe, because there was no breath to circulate, and my blood could no longer flow, because most of it was on the wall. So it seemed that I would be uncomfortable for eternity. But what's new? Even when I used to lay in the most comfortable position on a bed of clouds and fat puppies, it would only take an hour before I was forced to move again. Comfort is only a distant hope, after all, occasionally swooping down to give us a kiss on the cheek, only to fly away again. It offered a good chase, at least, but now it's gone, and it's never coming back. I can see its wings flap and flap, but its image only shrinks. Goodbye, little bird, and so my legs will stay. I don't even know who these people are next to me, beyond being an undesirable, of course. I always thought it would be my wife or children. Hell, even a neighbor in their place. But who are they? I don't know them. I've never seen them in my life, except maybe a passing glance or so. And yet, here they are. No one would ever want to imagine their coffin being shared with strangers. It's not fitting, I'll tell you that. And who pulled the trigger? I didn't recognize any of them either. When a man is put in such a position as I, isn't the smallest, most bare minimum honor you could give him is to at least let him see a familiar face before the black veil is draped. Even a simple photograph would suffice. Does their cruelty know no bounds? And what a disgusting day for it to happen. A clear, warm week ahead without a cloud on the radar. Yet they chose the only stormy day as the day. The rapping of the rain against the basement window was incredibly distracting, and all I had to do was stand still. I can't imagine the ruckus for the men with the job, but alas, it goes how it goes, just as it always does. Nothing new, nothing new. When my consciousness expired, there was a very bright light, just as you're told that you would see. It was like I was tied to the nose of a rushing train that was exiting a tunnel. I wasn't scared. I was intrigued, I suppose, but weary. It didn't seem like the light was growing as you'd expect, but it was still clear that we were bound to collide. And so we did. I then entered a still ocean, hovering over it, as if I was sitting on top of a floating rug. I looked around, and there was nothing that rose above the floor of shimmering water, completely level. I waited for some sort of figure to appear, an angel or guide, but no one came. I was alone. There was a thick white fog, more of a cream color, actually, and it was smothering everything, especially the horizon. The sky was the same color. I suppose it was more of a calm mist than a fog, if that makes sense. I stayed above the water, simply watching the mist, and I found myself entirely at peace. There was no tension or wonder. It felt right, natural, ethereal. Then the day succumbed to a wicked night. Everything was dark and ugly. But something in me knew everything was there, just as it was earlier. The water danced in an invisible moonlight, and due to the darkness, it was no longer water, but an eerie liquid. For the first time, I became aware of the possibility that the liquid might touch me, and it was terrifying. I couldn't say why. It's the same experience as seeing a familiar item in your bedroom turn into a demon when the lights go off. You know what it is and what it isn't, but you have nothing to prove it. And so, it was a demon. I found myself on the run again, but the reins were still out of my control. I soared through the dark mist to a sort of cave with a light echoing from its depths. Yet this light was only an illuminance in its vibrancy and not color. It was blacker than anything else in sight. You could shine the most intense beam of real-world light into the cave's exhaust, and the darkness would devour every ounce of it. There was no overshadowing its power. I was slurped into this cave like blood down a drain, and when I woke, I was surrounded by 4 things. They were human in their shape and size, but their faces and direct appearance were revolting, like bloody brain matter paired with the sensation of swallowing a razor blade. It's impossible to convey their grotesqueness. And they were in pain. They were suffering. Whatever they were, I was lying flat on the cave floor, looking at them, all standing over me. They were studying me in teary-eyed horror, just as I studied them. They were afraid and sad and grossed out. I was a brutal crime scene, and they were an innocent child. Their spirits yearned for an opportunity of hesitation, while their bodies functioned autonomously. They lifted me up like I was in a stretcher. Then they carried me through the cave, mostly keeping their vision to their path of travel, but occasionally sneaking a glance against their will at whatever I was to them. They placed me on a cold table and backed off, fighting themselves to sever the tie between their eyes and me. Then they were gone. All I could see was a wet cave ceiling. I knew a figure was next to me. I closed my eyes. It rolled its feet as it moved along my left side, doing seemingly nothing other than being present and busy. I don't know if it wanted me to open my eyes. It dared me to, but I would never. The ringing of complete silence was giving me the feeling of a terrible migraine. I couldn't relax because the figure was there, so I stayed alert and ready, as if there were some sort of instructions to be heard or questions to be asked. But there were none. No sound, no feel, only dread. Something was coming. Something was going to happen. It was racing to me. But there was nothing outside of the expectation of it to tell me. The figure paced. I didn't know what the figure looked like, and I would never dare to satisfy that curiosity. It wanted me to see it so that it could punish me. Like a bully hovering in your peripheral vision, waiting for you to make eye contact so it could warrant abuse. But the figure, what abuse was in its arsenal? I was inflating with the shivers of dread, the heat of its vibrations cooking me like a bowl of popcorn. The figure was by my feet, my unprotected, naked feet. It wasn't doing anything yet, but of course, it was getting ready for something. Something big. I never realized how soft and sensitive the skin on my feet was until then. I expected the Lord to be here, but he wasn't. What are the rules if the rules I lived by didn't work? I don't even know if I had skin or a body or anything other than my perception. I would never open my eyes to see. If my skin was still attached, it must have shaken itself loose by now. Trembles of this magnitude would bring down even the strongest city. It's on my right side now. What's it doing there? Why there? My left side is empty, exposed, naked. There's fidgeting behind me. Metallic clinking, shuffling. But it's delicate and gentle. There's no rush to it, like an assassin taking his time to thread on a suppressor. His mind is in the clouds, and his hand is on the gun. How could one smile in a time such as that? The figure isn't smiling, though, I'm sure. It's all business for it, nothing more. A freezing chill tickles my scalp, near where the figure is hovering. What is it doing? Wait. It left. There's no door to close, but some sort of barrier is now between it and me. It's gone, but I can still feel it moving through the cave, as if I have a map of its layout. I'm alone. My eyes will stay shut. I've decided it. I'm not risking it. Not for anything. It'll come back. The figure, it'll come back without a doubt. It's getting something for me. I know it. But what? Or is that it? Is it done? Or will there be more? Has it even started yet? What is it? I don't know anything, but I know enough to not be ignorant. There's something coming. It's on its way. But why am I here? What is here? Does everyone go here? Oh, it's back. The figure is back. Thank you for being here to listen with me. Let's enjoy the new story together. I've said too much. I noticed him the first time at the coffee shop on 3rd Street. He sat 2 tables over, stirring a cup of tea he never drank. He wasn't looking at me, not directly, but there was something in the way his head tilted, the way his eyes flickered over the rim of his cup, that made me feel observed. Every so often, he would blow on his mug, and eventually, this act became unsettling, as I knew the tea must have grown cold in the hour he sat unmoving. This man was dressed neatly, a stark contrast to myself. in a worn sweatshirt and messy bun that couldn't contain my red hair. He wore an ironed shirt, pressed pants, and his copper hair was immaculately combed and styled. He was remarkable because he simply did not belong. A bustling place with people moving in and out as he sat stoically with his tea. The second time was at the bookstore downtown. I was running my fingers along the shelves, searching for something to pull me in. Recently, I've been drawn to the paranormal and had moved into horror. It was terrifying, yet intriguing, as I began to imagine all there is out there that is unknown. As I perused the back of the latest Awad novel, I saw him standing in the philosophy aisle to my right. He wasn't reading, just tracing the spine of a book with one long finger. When I walked past, he looked up. "Not your usual genre," he said, nodding toward the horror novel in my hands. I frowned. "Excuse me?" He tilted his head. "You usually read literary fiction, something with layered metaphors, quiet heartbreak." A shiver danced down my spine. "How would you know that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he closed the book he had been holding and walked away, disappearing behind the towering shelves before I could press further. As I followed him, his pace quickened. Dressed in seemingly the exact same clothes as days before, with a steady, strong step, I could not place him, though it felt like I knew him from somewhere. In my haste, without noticing, I had run into a display. As the books scattered to the floor, I muttered apologies to the staff member who ran over. I quickly looked up, and he was gone. By the third time, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I was at the park, spring in the air, though Lake Michigan was still hedged in ice dunes, which rose and fell in the evening light, my breath curling in front of me in soft clouds. He was sitting on a bench, his posture relaxed, hands resting in his lap. Unlike before, he didn't pretend not to notice me. I noticed he wore a scarf. A scarf, I swear, was my own. I had lost it many years ago, in grade school, and was scolded for my carelessness. It couldn't be, I thought, as I approached closer. His gaze lifted as I approached, as if he had been waiting. "You always take this route home." I stopped in my tracks. "What?" He smiled, but it wasn't a casual, friendly expression. It was something else, something knowing. "The same path, every evening. You like the way the light hits the water at this hour." My pulse quickened. "Are you following me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured to the lake. There's something peaceful about watching things move where they aren't meant to be. The way ripples distort reflections. Everything familiar becomes something else. I crossed my arms. "That doesn't answer my question." He exhaled, running a hand through his auburn hair. "No, I suppose it doesn't." My skin prickled. "Who are you?" For a moment, I thought he might tell me. He parted his lips, as if considering it. His gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that sent a strange, twisting sensation through my stomach. But then, just as quickly, something shifted. His face, his expression. It was like watching a shadow pass over the sun. "I've said too much," he murmured, more to himself than to me. He stood, brushing invisible dust from his coat. "Forget this conversation." My heart pounded. "Forget it?" He nodded, his voice quiet. "It's better that way." And then he turned, walking away with an unsettling hum. I wanted to call out, to demand answers, but my throat tightened. I could only watch as he disappeared into the trees on the shoreline, his silhouette dissolving in the twilight. It wasn't until I turned back toward the path, heart hammering, that I realized something strange. There were no footprints where he had been standing, and the air where he had spoken still carried the scent of something I couldn't quite name. Something like old paper, burnt cedar, and a storm about to break. I don't remember deciding to come here. One moment, I was standing in the park. The next, the ice stretched before me, endless and waiting. I had begun to question whether I was losing my grip on reality. The strange man's cryptic words, the shifting moments in time, and the absence of solid ground beneath my feet had all led me to this moment, standing on the frozen shore of Lake Michigan. The ice cracked beneath my boots, protesting against the weight of yet another cold season. The lake stretched out before me, an endless horizon of white and blue that should have felt serene, but instead left me with an unsettling feeling, like something was wrong, something lurking just out of sight. I walked carefully, mindful of the shifting terrain beneath me. The lake was beautiful, but treacherous. Mounds of frozen sand rose in strange, wind-carved shapes, dusted with snow. The ice here was patchy, some parts solid, some beginning to crack and leak dark pools of water beneath. There was something about this place that made my stomach turn, something about the way the lake seemed to pulse under my feet. It felt alive, watching me, waiting. The icy wind bit at my skin, and my breath curled in the air in front of me in wisps of smoke. I knelt by a pool of dark water that had opened beneath the ice, watching as minnows darted below, their silver bodies flashing like tiny ghosts in the clear, cold depths. The clarity of the water made my pulse quicken. Too easy to see the darkness below. Too easy to imagine the lake's cold hunger. Then, something caught my eye, a darker patch of ice than the others. An odd shape trapped beneath the surface. I moved closer, my boots skidding slightly on the slick ground. The ice here was different, smoother, clearer, almost like glass. And underneath it, something unnatural. A smear of color, a reddish-orange streak that seemed impossibly bright against the deep blue-black of the water. My heart lurched. I knelt down, tapping gently at the ice with the toe of my boot, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The shape underneath wavered, but it didn't move. I pressed harder, cracking the ice, and then, as though the surface were giving up its secret, the water pooled, revealing what had been hidden beneath. Hair, long and dark, flowing like seaweed with the current. A face, pale and lifeless, staring upward, eyes wide and empty. My breath caught. A sharp, cold terror raced through my veins. I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest, but I couldn't look away. The wind howled, and the ice beneath me groaned, shifting uneasily, and then realization struck like a physical blow. The woman under the ice, frozen, lifeless, was me. A strangled sound left my throat. My mind recoiled, trying to reject what I was seeing. But there was no denying it. It was my own face staring back at me, my own vacant, sightless eyes, trapped beneath the ice. A whisper cut through the howling wind. "Do you understand now?" I turned sharply. The man was there, standing just a few feet behind me, as if he had always been. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes, an ancient sorrow, a knowing, made my stomach churn. "You weren't meant to find this," he said quietly, his gaze flickering to the ice, to the frozen image of me. I shook my head, my pulse pounding in my ears. "What is this? Why is she? Why am I?" "You've been lost," he said softly. "Lost in time, lost in memory. The past and future bleed together. You are the woman under the ice, and yet you're still here, trying to find your way." A deep, pulsing ache settled in my chest. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. I wanted to reject his words, to turn and run, but something about them rang true in a way I couldn't explain. I opened my mouth to speak, but something flickered in my peripheral vision. Movement in the ice. I turned sharply, expecting to see the body beneath me shift. But what I saw instead made my blood run cold. Reflections. Not just one, but many, scattered across the ice in broken, distorted fragments. My face, but not as it was now. Older, younger, crying, laughing, standing somewhere else entirely, flickering like a glitch in time. 100 versions of me trapped beneath the surface, shifting and blending like ripples in the water. One version of me didn't flicker and vanish like the others. She was staring back, her mouth moving soundlessly, like she was trying to warn me. My hands trembled, This isn't real. The man sighed, as if he had been expecting this reaction. What is real? He murmured. Is time so linear, Alex? Can you really be sure you're still the same person you think you are? Or have you already crossed over? My pulse slammed against my ribs. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong. But something inside me knew he wasn't. The lake groaned beneath me, the ice fracturing in slow, creeping lines. The world tilted, unsteady, and for a moment, I felt as though I was slipping between the cracks, the space between past and future collapsing around me. I turned back to the man, searching his face for some kind of anchor, some kind of answer. What do I do? I whispered. His eyes were solemn, unwavering. You come with me. There's only one way to move forward. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. I hesitated, my gaze flickering once more to the frozen version of myself beneath the ice. A life lost, a path already taken. But if I stepped away, if I turned back now, would I ever get another chance to change it? I swallowed hard. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. And then I nodded. The man held out his hand, and I took it. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.